Welcome to Into the Storm Leaders, the no BS podcast that ignites leadership potential and sparks innovation in the ever-evolving business landscape we all work in. I'm Joe Jurek, your host and catalyst for growth, joined by my co-host and CultureShoc senior coach, Pete Hansberger. Together, we embark on a journey to uncover the strategies, mindsets, and actions that drive truly exceptional leadership and winning culture. Whether you're an emerging leader looking to level up in your career or an accomplished executive seeking fresh perspectives, join us as we uncover inspiring stories and thought-provoking insights from proven leaders and share practical takeaways that enable courageous leadership. Get ready to charge into the storm and become a catalyst for better workplace culture. Welcome back to another episode of Into the Storm Leaders. We've got Joe Jurek, Pete Hansberger, my co-host, and we're pumped to have our guest today, Nate Stansberry. Hi.
Hey, excited to be
Welcome.
here. Thanks for having me. We were just commenting about the vulnerability headphones, and I said between that and the pink shirt, I'm sure the listeners and viewers are going to be in a good place. They're going to be ready to listen.
Yeah.
And
For some open and honest,
yes,
for some
just open and honest conversation.
I kind of feel a little bit like I'm in my 20s, and I'm cool now that I have these headphones on.
You've always been cool.
Makes me feel younger.
I remember when I was cool before I had kids.
Me too.
I have a neighbor that says that to me every time I see him, pretty much. He's got 4 young ones, though. Say, man, I used to be cool.
You know what? Like, I think after like the second kid, like it just you become immortal. You know, that's really the deal. You're a special type of human. 4 kids, that's insane.
See, I thought I was immortal in my earlier years, and then now that I have 2 kids, I realize how mortal I am. More than anything else, right? How many do you have?
I have 2 daughters. I'm done. I couldn't. I'm at mental and physical capacity.
The 2-daughter crew.
Yeah, I've got 2 daughters as well.
All right.
Exactly.
Way
yeah.
to go.
Yep.
My oldest is a daughter, my youngest is a boy.
Okay.
So 4.5.
Mixed bag.
Yep, got a mixed bag.
All
I
right.
was sure it was going to be all girls. And my wife has 3 sisters.
Sure.
It's like, oh, we're definitely getting all girls, and I'm cool being a girl dad.
Yeah.
And then I got my little dude too. It's like,
Nice.
you know.
Good stuff.
Well, folks, before we get too far into it, I'll tell you a little bit about Nate and how I met him just a couple weeks ago. Pete can tell you more about how they've known each other and his relationship with CultureShoc, but I was at an event called Talkin' Talent in Rocky River. It was at the Cleveland Yacht Club, and Kimberly Dyer from our team was on the panel. So wanted to go be a part of that conversation, or really just learn and listen to that conversation around attracting, hiring, and integrating top talent into your organization. Nate was one of the other speakers on the panel that day. I took some notes, quite a few. He spoke fast. I tried to get what I could, but there were some sentiments. I was like, oh, man, we got to get together. You got to talk to our audience on this podcast, because you seem like you generally knew what you were talking about, like you had some real-world experience in these things.
Right.
And a little bit of charisma to boot that made you easy to listen to because you're a great storyteller. So hopefully, we'll give you a platform to do some of that today, Nate.
Well, we're going to try. Right? I appreciate it. A big fan of CultureShoc. I've been involved with CultureShoc probably over a decade now with multiple companies.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, right? Come on.
Hearing it out loud.
But how transformative EOS, and even if you aren't, an EOS company, there's so many nuggets that you can take away and really learn to be a better leader, to run a better business, and frankly, to be a better human, right? I'm sure there's things that EOS kind of bleeds into your personal life, I'm sure, every single day.
Definitely.
Yeah, there were things that it just gave a common language to, and an organization of things that I'd seen in some iteration or been exposed to in some, time in my life, that the way that it just packaged them together, it's like, whoa, it's simple, but boy, does it make a whole lot of sense, right?
Right.
Well, and at the event that we were at, Joe came up to me toward the end of the event and said something like, we need to get Nate on the podcast. And I was just thinking, man, all you saw tonight was just a slight taste or scratch of the surface of Nate. And I was like, there's so much more beyond what he was saying tonight. And even in that night, you showed a lot of authenticity in your answers, and you were really trying to listen to the people who are asking the questions and ask follow-up questions. You know, there was one guy pretty passionate about having a hard time finding talent, I think, in the accounting world.
I had coffee with him, no joke, yesterday.
Is that right?
Yes.
Well, and a lot
That's
of speakers
awesome.
would just give some sort of general answer back to that question, or say, hey, have you tried putting it here or here, and in terms of the job description, and a very generic response. But you asked him follow-up questions and then got more information, and obviously you followed up. And so that authenticity is something that I think Joe recognized, and it refreshed it for me, because it's been a while since we've been around each other. And I was thinking that would be the perfect podcast guest. And I'm excited to hear more about your history, things that that we're not aware of.
Setting the bar
even
high.
Going back.
The perfect
I know.
podcast.
I know.
So far, you
getting
followed
there?
through with that guy.
Yeah.
And some would have seen him as almost a heckler and be like, I don't really want to address this, or I'll do so in some short, brief manner. But the fact that you recognize he's in pain.
He's a passionate business owner.
The way that I was introduced to you, I mentioned, was at Talking Talent.
Right.
We hit on some of your journey and how you got there. You, Taylor, the team over at Rust Belt Recruiting, you built something pretty awesome.
Sure.
Who's it for? What pain do you solve? What can you tell our listeners who probably have real need?
Yeah. If you're a company that is constrained by the lack of talent or talent process, what we've put together is a team of professionals who specialize in talent acquisition and are familiar with HR process from an industrial standpoint. And so we work best in environments that are within 150 miles of Cleveland, roughly under 200, but certainly can go above that. And obviously we work with plenty of companies that are under 50, right? Like even smaller, right? Like you need to have the budget and the will and all of that to get it through. And then obviously we work specifically in that industrial sector every single day. The reason why we're there is we feel like manufacturing, construction, various more hands-on essential industries that are really the cornerstone of our region, they haven't been approached, at least from the agency perspective, properly. We've commoditized this workforce. And so your typical agency is approaching it as purely a transaction, a short-term, you need X, Y, and Z.
Like
X amount of
warm
hires.
bodies.
You need
kind of
warm
thing.
bodies.
I'll get you those resumes. I'll get you those interviews.
And subsequently, the workforce, again, has adjusted so much. They're so better suited. They can sniff out bad opportunities. They felt marginalized maybe 5-10 years ago. They don't feel that way anymore. And so or leveraged is a better word, as you approach this workforce, you absolutely need to respect and treat them not like a commodity. You have to give them a white glove service. And you need to also be able to put those same controls, those same emphasis on process on the client side. And so the hard part for us as an agency is working with true partners who want us that involved.
Yeah.
And I get it. I understand. You look at the modern agency model and you're like, no, you're poaching people. And I was like, look, man, like we're not poaching people. People are people, right? Like whatever you want to call this, like we need to create an ecosystem for you. We need to talk about what your journey is. And our aim is to solve your talent challenges within 30 to 45 days. So we're going to start with the end in mind. We're going to work a very deliberate process. We're going to collect a lot of data along the way. And the way it works is on Thursday, which is Thursday, we look at our entire rec load, all the jobs we're working at. And we marry people with clients, right? So you get to know one of our team members with the rest of us working in the background. But ideally, we work on front end candidate traffic Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we may or may not be busting out, but like that's the outbound messaging to attract people in. We'll start collecting people, getting them in our funnel, and start screening them Monday, Tuesday, submitting that first round, those first candidates by mid to late week. We get feedback from you as a client. We take that feedback, go back to market for a second cycle, whether it's sourcing or an outbound digital strategy, whatever it might be. And then we get a better subset, a more accurate subset of exactly who you want. And then along the way, we're looking at how the metrics, and we let the metrics tell the story. If we're getting a lot of people in the door, but we're not getting them into process, there may be something off with the process, right? Like it may be too great a barrier to interview. There may be a disconnect somewhere in there, right? Like when you think about a funnel, right? We're just working a funnel and then applying data and giving feedback around that data. And so it's a very deliberate 2 weeks. And at the end of the 2 weeks, and sometimes it bleeds into week 3, depending when we get you in our web, you have a sit down with me. And I go, hey, this is what we're seeing. Here are the candidates in play. Here's what's working. Here's what's not. Here's our recommendation. And here's what we think needs to be true in order to get this over the goal. Sometimes it's a laundry list. Other times we're there. We're ready to rip. Yeah. That's why we say 30 days. Because you, just like selling a home, you get your most active buyers within those first 2 to 3 weekends. We do too. So if we're going to get this done for you, it will be sooner than later. We just are a little bit more meticulous. And in order for us to actually complete the mission, we ask that of our clients, to be on the mission with us. And that's the approach we take because that's what wins. We fill most of the jobs we get. That's unlike most agencies who are just going to take any job and then just fire it. That is not. So for a client that's looking for a hands-on approach, they have a major lift. They're adding a shift. They're adding equipment. They've lost TA leadership. They've never had TA leadership. They're reimagining talent acquisition, right? That's TA, sorry. These are companies that maybe have never had this challenge in 40 years and thinking about it for the first time. And they get Fran, who's the controller, in charge of it, and she has general contempt for the process because that's not what she does. And then they put a sign out front, and then they say, no one wants to work anymore. And you're like, holy crap. Like, people do want to work. They don't know how. You've got 3 letters on your building, HKM. What do you think? They don't know what's going on. They're wondering what happened to the rest of the alphabet. And so you hear it so much right now. I'm having such a hard time finding people. Or the culture at our place wouldn't put up with this or that. And I think that we're at a point right now that if you don't understand your culture and you can't bottle it up and put it out in the world, you're never going to get the people that you should be attracting, right? And so when we think about there is no right or necessarily wrong culture. There are certainly some issues like with some cultures and all that, but like the word authentic, that is so powerful. When you are an authentic leader, when you have values that are true to your organization, ideally you would attract and retain people that identify with that culture. Because culture, in a lot of ways, creates itself, and it's an amalgamation of the people in the rooms, in the halls, on the floor. And so whether you like it or not, you need to be intentional in casting the vision. You need to be intentional in what you're measuring. But boy, that culture will create itself. And identifying what your culture is the first step in really understanding what that authentic, true voice of your organization is. And then you just build the people systems around it. All right? Because for me, I've got about 20 years industrial HR and talent acquisition leadership. And so that's a lot of different environments. We work currently in about roughly 40 different environments. And to prescribe blanket solutions to everyone is absolutely wrong. You have to. The first step really in talent acquisition, right? I don't care if you're an agency or if you are in-house, internal HR, or you're just a hiring manager who's been asked to hire someone for the first time. You absolutely must get every single detail right off the bat. And what I mean by that is you got to capture why the role is open. What do you really, what are you trying to achieve with this position? What challenges you're looking to solve? What does the hiring process look like for the ideal candidate? Does this line up with our marketing message out there in the world? What does our benefits look like? Is that in line with reality and the market? What does the pay look like? And what is unique about our organization? What's special about us that is going to attract that person that wants to be here? And culture is one of those things. In fact, it's probably the most important thing. And when you get all of this information, when you start this journey to scale or to add people, here's the really scary part. Here's the vulnerable part. You got to get it out there. You got to take all this information and get it out there in a way that is digestible, that attracts that person, that is like, yes, that's the culture for me. That's the place I want to go. I think that these values, I believe this role, whatever it might be, that resonates with me. And it's authentic, because that's how you're going to beat heads up companies like Amazon or Walmart, who are going to be able to offer, maybe a higher hourly rate or have different benefit structures.
So this big machine.
This machine,
that
right?
is not quite as authentic, right?
Sure,
Like that is this
can't
edge.
be based on size.
I hope that's something that was clear there, and that's something that more folks recognize in their own businesses, that realness is, in a lot of ways, their competitive advantage, to lean forward with it.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think the term came up at Talking Talent a lot. I believe it was perhaps Kimberly who was saying, be unapologetic about who you are. Mm-hmm. Because if your core values, if who you are as a company, if that's more aspirational, things that you wish you were, that you're hoping for, instead of the reality of who you are, well, to your point, you're going to attract people that aren't really a fit with what that is. And sometimes it's being a little rough around the edges. Sometimes the vulnerability piece, it's scary as an individual and as a company, but it's who you really are. Like that, we talk.
You're going to find out eventually.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I was thinking too, when you answered one of the questions at Talking Talent, and just the way you're talking about, there's not really like a secret or a secret sauce that's easy in the moment. It's not an instant gratification game. Right. It seems like, if I'm saying I just need to fill these roles, and I go to somebody like Nate and you say, well, what's exactly the role? What do you want to get out of this? What is your culture? How are you putting that forward? I can sense sometimes a recoil in some people, and even myself, where I want the gratification right now, and I want the person without wanting to do the hard work. Yeah. And so if you run into that type of situation, I guess without getting too much into the weeds, how do you, is that something a firm like yours, do you walk people through that in terms of partnering with them to help define those things? And how do you convince somebody that it's worth it to do the hard work when they might just want a senior accountant tomorrow, and they don't want to go back through maybe the weeks and months to fully define their culture like they really should, or maybe they know that they should, but somebody's in pain. Well, how do you convince them?
That's perfect.
It's worth it.
And so what I tell them is, we're going to put a 30-day timer on this.
Gotcha.
This isn't forever. And here's exactly how we're going to do it. I'm going to ask these questions one time. It's going to take 45 minutes. And as a result, there will be no back and forth. You're going to have more velocity. And I think Joe and I were chatting earlier. The thing that's really changed in this market is we have a more educated consumer in a candidate now. And so no different than you look at how you shop for a home. You shop for a job online, much the same way. And so things just naturally move faster. And so if you don't have all of that information, whether, again, this is an agency working with you or your own HR team or your own hiring, if you do not lead with transparency, you're going to waste time. And in our world, the time kills absolutely all deals. TKAD. We sit there and time destroys everything around you. And so I meet that anxiety, I'll call it, or that concern from a client with equal concern around the time factor. I go, we want the same thing, but how we get there is very different. So if we can't spend 45 minutes on a phone call answering these questions, I'm going to put you through weeks worth of interviews with people asking those same questions.
Right.
Which do you want? Do you want to get it out of the way now once with me and then it's handled? Or would you rather answer these questions every time I put someone in front of you?
Yeah,
And
that's
usually,
a good point.
Usually that ends. And honestly, strategically speaking, I need these because I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to be like, hey, Jim, I don't know if you're interested in this or that or whatever, but here's who they are. Here's why the position's open. Here's what they're offering. Here's why I liked your background. Boy, you got to tell people that. I'm going to tell you this right now. For every young recruiter listening, agency or otherwise, you are missing the boat if you don't tell people why you love them. That is the easiest hack to recruiting anywhere on the planet. Anyone who's ever worked with me will come out of that situation saying, I absolutely love that guy because I loved you. I reached out to you for a reason, professionally, of course, right? The first thing I tell someone is why I am reaching out. Hey, Pete, there's this company. Here's the company info, right? I'm not going to be cagey about it. Either I'm internal or external working on this, right? From a recruiting standpoint. Here's the role. Here's why it's open. Really important, right? Here are the basics, right? Here's the comp. Here's kind of the day-to-day. Here are a few of the things. Listen, I'm reaching out to you because of this experience. This specific experience you've got, that's what they're looking for. And so I'm reaching out to you because I think that you'd be a great fit for this. And if it seems interesting enough, I'd love to send you some more information and have a follow-up conversation. And so automatically, I'm engaging you, okay? And I'm starting to get you to do things for me. And so, but I'm giving you something first, right? So it's like, hey, here's absolutely everything. I'm going to throw everything at you. And what I said at the end is, we're going to have a conversation about this, right? So you're like, oh, maybe you're not ready to have this convo because you're probably not.
Sure.
Okay. But also if you're going to, I'm never going to get you on any, so for people who think cold calling is dead, okay, whatever. That's fine. I get it. And in some channels it may be, but you cannot make the same connection over email. You cannot make these, you must have a very compelling pitch, right? And what's more compelling than here's an awesome opportunity. Here's why I think you're good for it. And I really want to connect with you. I'm a good human. I'm not going to beat you up. This is a 2-minute conversation. I recognize that maybe you're not looking, and that's okay too. The best people aren't. I'd love to have a conversation because I've been asked by my client to find you. People melt them.
Sure.
Well, because you recognize their value,
Absolutely.
right? They feel like, all right, this person is acknowledging that.
Yeah.
So instead of the indifference that is often felt where, you want something, you're like, do they like me? Do they not like me? I don't know where I stand with this.
Yeah.
And to feel that, it gives you these kind of internal notifications of, well, if I'm at this place and this is how they've made me feel in the first few interactions, I might have more upward trajectory there because their outsourced at times recruiting team or whoever I'm talking to that's the extension of them is making that a priority to acknowledge value.
And I know we're kind of going off the rails here, but I just think it speaks to that vulnerability. Why a hire request is so important, because if you're going to have someone go to market for you, they just take that hire request or that internal intake and they go to market with that. They have everything they need. Go out there, preach the good news, right? Go get my people. This is what we need. And so with that, you've got all the power you need to go find that person, right? When you have the right recruiters in the room. Now, there is a bit of tradecraft that's next, right? So I sent you an email with all this information. I also follow up with a text message saying I sent you that information.
Sure.
Then I ask you to reach back out and let me know what you think. Usually I get a pretty warm response, and maybe I'll ping you 2 or 3 times. But now we're shifting because so many people are like, oh, if you give them all this, if you give them all the answers to the test, how do we know? And the answer is no one gives a crap about the answers. They want to, let's get people to prove their work, right? If you hand out the answers to the test, okay, people can select in or out of the process, yeses and nos. They mean the same thing early on. How fast we get there matters. But you don't necessarily care that they get the answers right. You want to see the work along the way. And that's what the interview process is. Show me how you get to these answers. I don't care that you have the right answers. I want to know how you get there, right? And so you save a hiring manager that ability. And here's a perfect process for you, okay? Your recruiting team goes out, engages candidates, gives them the answers to the test. That person now is on the hook to follow up, right? So that person should reach out within a day or 2, right? I try to say, hey, if this seems interesting to you, get back to me by the end of the week.
Do you put a little ownership on them?
Absolutely.
Balls in their court.
Balls in your court. I'm not going to bug you again, okay? But I really need to fill this job, and I thought you were great. If this seems like it's worth a follow-up convo, let's talk. And then you start extracting. So you engage, you extract, and then you put them in process, right? You let the process kind of take care of itself. There's no secret sauce here. It's the ability to really help people through this process, because it's often awkward. No one likes interviewing, right? Like, typically. And if you're doing it all the time, you should be good at it. And a good interview should be a conversation. And great opportunities speak for themselves. So let her rip.
There was some good nuggets in there. And listen, you said we went a little off the rails.
It's already
I
helpful, I think.
It's just off the rails.
Like, we often say that the best conversation comes in between the questions when it was a story, an example that came from it. So don't you worry.
I'm drinking the tap water.
Carte blanche.
Right.
We're going to talk about wiener dogs in this
That's
episode. We're going to talk about
there's
all sorts of obscurities.
Oh, nice.
I was going to say, that reminds me of that one time Nate called me and said, I think you'd be perfect for this up-and-coming food service organization. You're great client-facing. There's a front desk role at this place called Taco Bell that I think you'd be perfect at. And then he took me through the whole process. And
You lasted there 2 weeks
This is a
before
year
you
ago,
got
yeah,
promoted to
but,
customer.
Did it work out?
didn't end up getting the job, but
You had a passion for
thought
it.
I was perfect for it. So I
You made
appreciate
some real
that.
connections.
My man.
You continue
One of
to
the top
visit them.
consumers potentially in the country.
That
so.
is one of my strategies, right? When we think about taking a consumer and converting them to an employee, that honest to God,
Might be something there. Yeah,
there is something there.
Just a silly example.
I did that with there was a company I was working for, University Teas. Shout out to them, great organization. I was there for 10 years, and
One of our earliest EOS clients, and a company we admire and love a lot of what they do.
I was head of people and strategy for them for about a decade, and honestly, as funny as the Taco Bell example is, that is a big foundation to their recruiting success, right? Like, we identified early on, because our end user, which is predominantly college students, right?
Right.
Also would make for a great representative of the organization. And we already have their contact information. So what we kind of built was a system of taking our very best customers and then converting them to our very best representatives on like that kind of hands-on college program level, and then promoting them into the organization as a full-timer. And I think that, while this is somewhat unique to University Teas, I believe that if you're in a company that's super niche, okay, you're in advanced manufacturing, you are in something that you just feel like, we're not meeting the demand for talent, hopefully based on growth, and you can spin it to be based on growth, but you're marketing to your vendors, to your customers, Like those are channels that you absolutely are underexploited for talent purposes. You are reaching out to them often about new products or events or whatever it might be. Share the good news. Hey, we're growing. We love you as a vendor or a customer. If you know anyone in your network who might be interested in joining our amazing team because you have an amazing experience, let us know. I guarantee you're going to get people in the door. Moreover, internally, if you have a referral program that doesn't work, it doesn't work for a reason. The best talent networks, historically speaking, are built on referrals, and it doesn't need to be this like grandiose incentive structure. You can start that way to kind of jumpstart it. But you think, I work in the industrial sector almost, not exclusively, but that's just where I found myself over the years, right? And some of it's high tech, but bear with me. If you were going to work 60 years ago, you went to work where your neighbor went to work, where your parent went to work, where your friends went to work. And essentially they had these pipelines of talent, 50, 60 years ago that were unending, that were predicated on the community being built around the company. Company picnics were a community event. And so you start thinking about what that means more, not just within the context of recruiting, but integration, elevation, succession. It all solves itself. And so if you are an industrial company, even if you're not, and you don't have a community-based recruiting strategy, you're missing the mark. So those are the two, what would I do today if I went in a house with a company that was looking to scale? I'd start exploiting my vendor and customer networks for talent, and I would immediately be in a community outreach. And, start slow. Don't expect it to change overnight. But when I think about the best industrial companies and the best companies in general, 50% or more, 50% or more should come from referrals internally. That means your culture is being perpetuated and grown upon, and people are attracting people, and those are the best people because you don't have to worry so much about intentional mentorship. You don't have to worry so much about intentional integration. These things happen naturally. Now, you do have some other problems, you can homogenize a culture. You can bring in domestic challenges, and that's fine.
Or have these factions of
You can do that. That can
people
happen.
From who work together at another organization.
That can happen.
Teaspoon and nepotism every once in a while.
Right.
The reward does far outweigh the risk in that scenario, though, right?
It's kind of like those hierarchy of needs. Do you need people or not? Right? Okay, I'm not going to exploit my vendor networks and the community because of fear that one day we might have no other issues but the occasional hiccup. Give me
more
a
modern
break.
HR, or more typical HR issue. I should
Right,
say.
and your HR team is they're prepared to deal with it.
So you hit on a sentiment that I want to open up a little bit further. Sure. And in my experience, so many see HR more closely connected to legal than they do connected with marketing.
Right.
And you've talked about kind of how you're going to market, how you're positioning your brand, your company, who you are, all of those things. Is there anything you want to shed any light on a mentality shift or why? If you're trying to overcome that objection and help somebody recognize how important it is to have kind of that, two-pronged approach of HR and marketing versus seeing it as so compliance and policy.
When we think about policy, I'm just going to, and this isn't going to work for everybody, but when I think about policy, I because I've been in that HR leadership seat and find myself in it today. As managing director, everything pretty much rolls up to me. We set policy to the top, right? And that's not going to work for every company everywhere, right? But we set policy to the top. We take every policy decision we have and weigh that against whether or not this is going to bring in more top behaviors, right? If you're going to set up a punitive culture, expect a punitive experience. And I know that there needs to be safeguards in place to prevent exposure to litigation. Okay, no one's suggesting otherwise, and I understand that there needs to be basic, handbooks and expectations set. Like, that's all good. That's fine. That's freaking table stakes. But when your HR seat is only compliance driven, you are going to grind your best talent to the bottom. You will measure the bottom, not the top. And what gets managed, or what gets measured gets managed, right? Yeah. So what do you think you're going to get? Do you think you're going to get higher performers in a culture like that? Or do you think you're going to get a culture of, it's 5:01, out the door? Actually, no, it's 5 o'clock in 1 second, I'm leaving. And so you need to empower people to do the right thing all the time. Autonomy, flexibility, true greatness isn't going to survive in a culture like that. It'll be consistent. You'll stay out of trouble, maybe. Okay? Because those same handbooks, those same policies, right? Number one rule. You really want to know the number one rule in HR not to get sued? Happy people don't sue you. Happy people don't sue you. Does that sound like a happy place to you? That's the rule.
How do you set policy at the top then? Is it a small set of fundamentals that must be followed, or rules that must be followed, an opportunity to treat people like adults, as long as they're meeting some sort of minimum standard of compliance? Or?
And I think that's part of it, right? Like, so there may be disparity in policy, right? So like if you've got really hands-on roles versus more, let's call it white collar roles, there's going to be something, you're going to have some mellowing there, right? Because like, how are we supposed to set an attendance policy for someone who has to be operating a piece of equipment versus someone who can work from home?
True.
I get it. But that's not a fair comparison, right? And I know how that impacts culture, okay? And that's why there isn't a one size fits all. You need to figure out like what's going to work for your culture. And I think the first thing you do is you look at what's in place right now from a policy perspective and figure out which policies you're only selectively enforcing. And so if you've got an attendance policy that you don't follow, you don't have an attendance policy.
Right.
And I think that a lot of companies like to pretend that they've got a handbook, the handbook's going to save, and the handbook isn't going to do a thing for you.
We'll use it when it's convenient.
Oh, it'll be used as a weapon.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to take all these policies and say, hey, you know what? Like, you fired me, but you didn't fire Seymour, who did X, Y, and Z. And you didn't fire Jan, who did X, Y, and Z. And oh, by the way, you didn't even follow your own reporting process for this or that. You're screwed. So you need to figure out what exactly you are following, cut out the rest, or figure out what kind of behaviors or what kind of incentives you're looking to build into your company from an HR perspective or a policy perspective, and hold people to them. It's been so hard. The pandemic has destroyed, I'd say, more policies than any single event anywhere. How can you live within an attendance policy when you just need to get product out the door? How can you enforce these things? And we're coming back to it. Mm-hmm. We're coming back. Listen, I think when we think about creative ways to address some of these bigger issues, right? Like, I think that it's a bigger conversation. But I would say that if I were a company today and I'm looking in this post-pandemic kind of workplace, it reminds you a lot of 2019, 18. And so if I have access to this data and I look backward, I would take the plan I had going into the pandemic, which is tight labor market, kind of squirrely economic conditions, okay, but like stable-ish, right? Stable adjacent, okay?
It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Believe me, things are
stable adjacent. I like that.
I think what you're going to see is really
describes the sleeping patterns of my two young kids.
Mm-hmm.
Stable adjacent.
Yeah, the sleep adjacent. But like
every third night we might get a good night.
The ratcheting up of interest rates and the cooling of economic conditions has only done so much to slow down the labor market, okay? It's certainly made the cost of borrowing more expensive. And already, I think a lot of employers right now are dealing with a few things. One is the cost of money is more. The industrial sector is extremely capital intensive. The cost of people, okay, through the great correction of the last 3 years, people cost more too. And the backlogs aren't there and the incentives from the government aren't there. What we're going to see over the next, and I'm looking in the crystal ball here, is probably a soft-ish landing going into the new year. And we start an election cycle that'll only put more pressure on economic conditions. You're going to see a repeat of 2018, 2019 from a zeitgeist, like what to expect, the consumer sentiment, which drives consumer behavior, which drives the industrial sector, right? And we start thinking about, if I'm an HR leader, general manager, if I'm a leader in general right now, we can expect monetary policy to ease. It probably won't go down a ton, but we can expect the cost of capital to come down. We should expect the reshoring of products to increase those backlogs. And we should also expect a lot of retirements to happen, because when we think about the baby boomer generation, that is, like, they call it the silver wave, right? And so the need for talent will be there. And so what we had pre-pandemic was exactly that. We had a tight labor market, the tightest in history. We had easier monetary policy, I'll give you that. And then a return to domestic industrialization, if for lack of a better word. And so if I'm like a leader, I'm dusting out the 2018 playbook as a rough draft, heading into the not only the second half of this year, but truly heading into Q4 and to start Q1.
Interesting. Well, and just one more thing on that
Right.
note, going back to the policy conversation,
Sure.
as well as, how we should be refreshing those or building on those or building them for the first time if
Right.
we don't really have great policies. Is there a way to build those where we are building them as if everybody is expected to be a top performer within the organization versus and treating people like top performers versus building policies in a way that are, trying to, treat people like they're a low performer,
Setting
or
a minimum expectation line.
yeah,
That's the
or having a
punitive nature.
it's all about discipline, making sure that people are punished if they
Yeah,
don't show up
yeah.
on time,
Let's punish
versus
them.
treating people like high performers and adults. And that's something Ron covered, really early on when I started, about, what can we do to make sure that everyone feels treated like a high performer. And even when we go in and do, facilitation and workshops,
Right.
we'll talk to groups about that. And it's easy for us to say on the outside, hey, here's what you should do, or you should do, this, that, or the other. But I'm interested, from both your perspectives.
I know.
Let me
go
say
ahead.
one, though, because
go ahead.
that made me think so much about appreciative inquiry and just that emphasis or focus on positive. When you expect or set expectations that people will succeed, they often live up to that.
Sure.
But if we become so jaded and cynical by our own experiences or lack of awareness of, like, where we owned it, and instead put it on somebody else,
Oh, man.
then you start to look at it, well, these people are idiots, or
Right.
nobody wants to work. There's
Yeah.
nobody who has the skills that they used to when they came into this.
man.
And where they have
Yeah.
that lens over where they just expect the worst. What are you going to get?
Right. Well, and there's still a reality we have to live in too. It feels like, if I go to a construction company and say, you should have unlimited vacation for your team and no start time and end time,
course.
then you might never have anybody show up at the work
We're not
site.
just doing
So
ping pong tables.
course.
Everyone gets a ping pong table.
we're putting a
saying,
table
Of course.
on the construction site,
Right.
things like that. And so it's like maybe in some cases unrealistic to treat every industry or every company exactly the same. But is there a way to, if you're consulting with people, HR leaders
Yeah.
and such, how do you set that high standard and treat everyone as if they should be expected to be a top performer versus if you don't do exactly what I say when I say it, you're in trouble?
You know what? I'll give you this. When I think about, there's two things that I'm going to pull out. One, I've had so many managers come to me over the years and, just say, Nate, this isn't gonna work, because what am I supposed to do about Joe? Joe doesn't come in on time. He's always doing this. He's always doing that. And I go, just fire Joe. What are you doing? Like, so many people don't realize that you don't have to live in a world where bad behavior is tolerated. Okay? Like, just eliminate these people. All right? Like, we can fire people. In fact, you're probably going to fire Joe anyway.
And unfortunately, when you kick the can down the road, by tolerating it, you're enabling others to adopt the same behaviors,
Bingo.
and you lose some of your best people who
100%.
aren't that way because
they're pulling the bag.
frustrated.
They're holding the bag for everybody else.
Right.
They're holding, and so to policy, right? Like, how do we, the policy needs to be appropriate for the business you're in, right? And I think that whether it's a hands-on role like a construction company or an industrial role, or it's to the opposite, right? Maybe it's a extremely technical role and you need to allow for creativity, and you need, there's 10 people who can do this nationwide. We need to have realistic expectations around working hours and the scope of work. I think you adopt the policies that make sense for your business, but you also are open and honest around why. And I think people are reluctant to give the real answers around, or they don't feel like they need to, right? It's a strange, like, entitlement. There's a lot, like, that word is thrown around a lot. And it's like, no, tell people why this is the thing. Like, I think we had that ping pong table example, or I think it was like something like that, right?
Right.
The problem with the ping pong table is if that becomes a living metaphor for inauthentic cultures, right? You're sitting there, it's collecting dust, and it's like, yeah, we're working 12-hour days, but hey, at least we got a ping pong table. And the other end of it is you're playing ping pong, and 2 or 3 people in the business absolutely hate the idea because they're trying to lock in and get work done, or they're in a leadership seat and they just don't see it as adding value. And now all of a sudden there's a ping pong tournament going on, and half the company wants to choke you to death because they're processing orders. So now,
when you're walking by now, even when nobody's playing, it's triggering those negative behaviors, and it has become this symbol of all that is wrong.
All
right?
that is wrong.
Well, imagine a leader keeping score too of how often somebody is playing ping pong during the day, and they're looking out of their office if it's within their purview, being like, man, that person's playing ping pong again. They must not be working.
This
person, you put the table there in the first place.
To go on tour. They're going on tour. They're smoking everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you're holding it against somebody who's utilizing the amenities that you've set up in the first place.
That's right.
I think incorrectly, the blame is so often put on the workforce.
Sure.
And we talk all the time about extreme ownership, right? Just defaulting to ownership. Sure, the employees could very well be a big part of the problem.
Yeah.
And I am an advocate for when you recognize somebody's not a value fit or that their heart's not in it, have an honest conversation to find out why. Mm-hmm. And, in a compassionate way, help them find something that is going to bring them more satisfaction out of what they're doing. It's better for them. It's more kind to address it.
Sure.
But leaders so often just point that finger instead of recognizing, like, okay, I do need to fire this person. Wait, did I set proper expectations and actually confirm them? When you come out with these policies, are they transparent to your point? Are they communicated and over communicated in a simple way that people actually can understand and act on?
Right.
Those components are so often missed, right? And you get to this situation where the reason people don't fire somebody is because if they're really honest with themselves deep down, they know they didn't do the right things along the way. So this is a product of their own, deficiencies as a leader.
I agree. When we think about the workforce in general, it just is, right? And turnover and production, all these things, these are just numbers and data points. And the reason how this applies is it is our job to deal with whatever the workforce is, whatever the turnover is, whatever our retention numbers may be, or our output numbers may be. These are our things, right? Like, these are people, right? If we don't cast the right vision or hold them accountable or give them the tools to be successful, we live in these results. These are our results. This is what we did, not what someone did. The workforce is not inherently lazier. We have probably the smartest group of humans that have ever been on the planet. Right? More information and
resourceful
access.
As all get
Come
out.
on. All of a sudden, no one wants to work anymore? No. They don't want to work for you.
There's this video that we play where it's you might have seen it, the guy who's going back to like 1920. Nobody wants to work anymore.
100%.
Nobody wants to work
headlines.
anymore.
Right.
Nobody wants to work anymore.
Yeah.
A disgruntled businessman says nobody wants to work anymore.
Right.
And
Every decade.
when you're in it, it so often feels like your situation is so unique. You're the only one who's ever experienced this. In reality, these things haven't gone away.
Sure.
They're constant.
Why would anyone want to work for you is the better question.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a tough one because you have to look in the mirror,
Every day.
instead of project outward.
Yeah.
All right, spirit of vulnerability. We hit on some of these things. I like the flow of where our conversation's going. We're good. I think our listeners too. They'll get something valuable out of this.
Sure.
I do also want to take it back a little bit. We often kick off meetings, sessions that we're doing with folks. We'll do a little bit of almost goofy, but just a layer or two down, vulnerable share.
Yeah.
Right. So we know Pete hoped his first job was going to be Taco Bell. He didn't quite make the cut. But we often talk
I
first
landed
job.
at Subway. It's like if you shoot for the moon, you land amongst the stars. So.
Yeah.
They're doing
I was able to-
sliced meats now.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't you actually invented the Italian BMT, or at least
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
From all of our listeners.
I
who
was
have
able
the
to smell
love
like
for it.
mayonnaise every day when I went home.
That's
but
true.
I still eat Subway. It's good stuff. But
Hey.
That started before Subway. And
This segment
still
brought to you
remains,
by
so.
Subway.
yeah.
Right.
Thanks to our new sponsor.
Yeah, right.
First job, worst job.
Oh, okay.
All right. So tell
yeah.
us, let's zoom back a little bit. I know you led
Ooh.
talent and strategy at University Tees.
Sure.
We haven't gotten there yet. We'll talk more about what you're doing currently. You mentioned you're a managing director, something industrial related. I imagine it has to do with recruiting and
Yeah.
HR. We'll talk more about that,
Okay.
but let's zoom back. First job, worst job, and let's get into your journey a little bit, how you got to where you are.
All right. So first job, Dick's Sporting Goods. Okay.
What department?
Oh, this is where it gets fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So, was all-state wrestler, multiple state championships with cross country, not personally
No
team
kidding.
championships.
Good
yeah.
stuff.
Right. And I fish probably 2-3 days a week. I was a charter boat captain for a number of years. You can see Captain Nate Stansberry on Instagram. Come on. No, but seriously, it's there.
I'm
there.
a follower.
Yeah, come on.
Wait, can we get on the boat and you'll do the guided narrated
I
tour?
literally
and-
have to do. I have a choice to do one on Saturday, and I'm taking my dental hygienist fishing with his family on Saturday.
We could do a whole interview just on that probably because I've got a ton of
Insane.
questions.
Can we do an
man.
interview on the charter boat? Like one
100%.
day we'll get out there.
Come
We'll-
on, let's go
I
get a
think
few.
We're mobile. We can. All right, go ahead.
So I'm what, like 18, right? I went through a phase where I don't know, I was somewhere between Sugar Ray and Eminem, where I would dye my hair. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah,
the
it
tips
was
or all
sweet.
of it?
Whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whatever you
Frosted
got.
tips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I literally, I've been fly fishing since I was 10, and tying flies since then too, in these early 90s, right? And so I knew way more, than anybody in the fishing department.
In the Dick's fishing department?
Yeah, which is not a high bar for the record, okay?
I was
That's
going to say, the humility in there, I knew way
whatever,
more than
like,
anybody.
Half the time it's a guy
At the
who's
Dick's
covering
fishing
for
department.
somebody who
Yes,
normally works in
yes,
men's clothes
yeah.
and
He's
it's
like,
just in the fishing.
we got bass and we got catfish.
You got a guy who's he's doing
Yeah.
this as his retirement job, been fishing his whole life, and you're kind of comparing who knows more about fishing.
Oh, I'd smoke that,
And-
dude. Don't even go there with it.
And we
he's
got a
getting-
Are
big
you
rod
kidding
and we
me?
got a small rod. We got-
I'm gonna smoke that guy. I am not an evil
he's
person
thinking-
except for in this vein. You've struck it today.
I forgot more than you know, son.
Bring it on.
Right.
Bring it on, sucker. I'd like to see. And so as a result, they put me in team sports. I didn't play any team sports. I wanted to be in fishing. Mm-hmm. They were never gonna let me in there,
Dang.
but they always called me in, man.
Yeah.
That was the deal. They were
You
like,
came
"Hey."
into support.
Oh my God. They were like, hey, we don't know what this is. I'm like, it's a crappie rig. Get back to team sports. Oh, I don't know anything about baseball.
It's like, I'll be back.
Yeah.
When you're hurting.
Yeah. When you're hurting.
When you need me.
You know who to call.
Throw up the signal.
Yeah. And they did. It was wild. Made a lot of good relationships there. A lot of first job, bad decisions too, but different podcasts.
Yeah.
Sounds like maybe not your worst job then, unless it was the team sports side where you were just longing for the fishing department so much.
They did the right thing. They did the right thing. I was a punk, I think everyone needs to look in the mirror and say, yeah, I was, 18 and an ididiot.
Boy,
it's a time of our life to learn a lot, though.
Yeah, I remember when I was cool before I had kids, and it wasn't when I was 18. I went back. I'm like, I was kind of an a-hole.
I don't even know that I was employable. Okay, like straight up, and
I was selling 100% commission appliances and electronics at H.H. Gregg at the time, which was jump straight into that and be the young whippersnapper who's just nothing to lose. I was like, this is incredible. I was not in the right mindset to have a full-time job.
Right.
Like, yeah, another podcast.
Another podcast. Worst job. Boy. Okay. I sold fish commercially in New York City for a day. I moved to New York. Okay,
24 hours.
So hold on.
It's like, I got some fish, man.
Don't even go there. It's what it was.
I'm picturing a Law and Order episode actually where a guy's unloading fish off a big truck and they're I work with Tony,
The truck gets
100%.
repoed on his first day.
Yeah.
No, they own the repo. It's a problem. All right. I don't even know that I can talk about this. I don't, you want to
let's talk in generalities.
Yeah. We're going to keep this general. So I spend roughly, let's call it just under 5 years with FedEx doing HR work. And we can get into that. And it was a great experience. I love them to death. And I moved to New York with my wife. We weren't married at the time. She's like, we're going to New York City. I'm like, the hell we are. Next thing you know, we're in New York City. And
that's like Jim
from
Gaffigan.
Cleveland. You were born and raised here.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting probably conversation or series of conversations, but that reminds me of the Jim Gaffigan comedy bit where he goes, yeah, my wife said, let's go apple picking. And I go, no way.
Right.
No way at all. And he goes, 30 minutes later, I'm at an apple orchard with a basket in my hand.
I remember she faxed me over. I'm at a terminal, okay, doing my job. At this point, I'm a well-adjusted professional, okay? And I see something come through the fax machine. It's a lease agreement to this apartment in Brooklyn. I'm like, oh, my God, what's going on? And she's like, I'm moving. See you later. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess onward, off we go. So I moved there, and I started looking into different opportunities, and I eventually landed into an amazing opportunity with Robert Walters in Times Square.
But you knew you loved fish.
Well, I knew I loved fish, so I applied to this job, commercial fish sales. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I've been waiting this all my life. And so I get to the place, and true to form, there's dead fish everywhere. And that's cool. I'm like, whoa, oh my God, like, look at all of these, like, crazy fish. This is the craziest thing ever.
And is it some kind of warehouse or a wharf or something?
Yeah. This is in a warehouse in a really tricky part of town, and I'm not going to say exactly where because they are major time. Anyway, basically, your job was to decipher orders from all of the fanciest restaurants in New York City, and then marry that recording, an actual recording, to the fish out in the, freezing warehouse. The problem here is, I don't know if you know anything about executive chefs or New York City, not one of them spoke English.
Oh.
So it's like Portuguese, a lot of Portuguese, a lot of French, a lot of Japanese. And so you're sitting there listening to this insane recording in these like broken quasi East Coast, quasi very like
think this guy wants
Yeah.
a fish.
Like,
This guy wants a fish too.
It would appear these people want fish, and these people don't mess around. You're dealing with people like it is like this
high-end
and
chefs.
I'm like, holy.
So you can't afford to
shit.
make a ton of mistakes, despite not really understanding what they're
say
trying
it
to
again
say.
just for fun.
All right, we can say the S word.
You can say.
Oh my God.
Whatever. I mean, not only could we edit it out, we won't. I think.
Don't.
And we talk authenticity.
I understand. So
unapologetic.
And you're working weekends, which no one told me going into this.
Gotcha.
All right, pretty much 7 days a week, and you smell like fish, and you can't get it wrong. It's like the most high pressure, sales-ish job that you can't get right, and everyone is yelling at you, and you're just sitting there, and you're trying to decipher between catfish and codfish and cuttlefish. And it's like you're just losing your mind while everyone's yelling, and it's the only speed anyone can go at. And so it was, and OPS, you barely make any money. So it's like no money, no fishing. You smell like fish, and you're getting yelled at all day. I don't know. I don't understand. Like, talk about it. It was crazy.
Like how anyone does that? Because it gets
Welcome
done
to New
somehow.
York.
Well,
all right, it's boot camp.
And I'm Midwest nice, right? Like, I just got back from Wisconsin. Now they truly have it going on there. I felt like a true New York City guy going to Wisconsin and Minnesota because they truly are nice. Like, no doors are locked. They're coming up. They're asking you questions. You think you're being interrogated, and you're just like, no, we're just shooting the breeze, right, out for a rip. You're like, what the hell does that even mean? Regardless, I'm in there and it just, I was like, guys, I love you. This isn't for me. And I'd actually turned down a job. This is so crazy. All right. So I get to New York. I interview for this beautiful agency job. All right. Recruiting agency, Times Square. And I'd done 4.5, let's call it 4 to 5 years, corporate HR and recruiting work for FedEx Ground, mostly in Cleveland, but we did go outside to some other terminals as well. Amazing people. First boss took chances on me. Kiara Bunch, shout out to you every day. You know what I mean? Like, without her, wouldn't be here today. That is God's honest truth.
Awesome.
Jason Silvis as well. And yeah, we'll talk about that. But yeah, so like I moved to New York City, get this crazy ass, but in the process of doing it, I get offered this job at Robert Walters, which was, still is great recruiting agency, multinational, based in the UK, but all over the world, more boutique, serving mostly the investment community. And it was amazing, right? Kurt Krager at the time ran the show in America, in the U.S. office, and really gave me a chance. And so
did the timing line up well?
No, this was the crazy. So here's the crazy part. So I get this job, and they offer me the job, and I don't show up I say, hey, look, I got another offer at the fish place. I'm going to go there.
Okay.
And he's just like, you are so out of your mind. Good luck, young man. Right? And I show up for one day, and I call Kurt back, and I'm like, Kurt, I'm so sorry. And Kurt is laughing. I can hear him. I can see him laughing right now. He is like losing his mind because he thought it was the greatest. He's like, it tracks. This is fine. You idiot. Get in here. And I don't know if he was just planning on torturing me for a while, but my first job for Kurt was to kind of prove myself. I was given a Hoover's account, and what that basically is a digital phone book. And I was given a Hoover's account, and in there it was like digital phone book meets the beta version of Zoom Info, right? Like it would give you seemingly unimportant information that you had to tie together and figure. Anyway, so I'm cold calling for what I thought was a CFO job for a division of Raid, the cockroach spray.
Yeah.
So I'm working directly under Kurt right off the bat and doing hundreds of calls a day. And I put someone on an interview, I still remember, I may have even placed the guy inadvertently, right? Because looking back, I was just generating leads for Kurt.
Sure.
Which is fine. You know, that's what you should do at like 25. And when I did it, you know, I made it happen within like a week or two. He was like, okay, fine, we're actually going to pour into you. And I spent 10 months with them.
Okay, so you proved your worth right away.
Yeah, and it was awesome.
Okay.
And then I ended up going in-house with a client called Ez Castle Integration, and they did IT services for the hedge fund world. And what we did is basically set up technology professionals on site or outsourced completely for high net worth investment group, you know, smaller shops that, you know, they want to execute trades faster. And so what you do there is you would just go to Best Buy and you would recruit the Geek Squad. And so you'd put a quote in at the Geek Squad and you strike up a conversation, you'd just pull them out of there. And there's many, oh man, because they're the best, right? We're talking about connectivity issues. We're talking about marrying, because it was...
That was the persona of your hire, right?
Oh, yeah, yes, 100 all the way. Whatever you're making, we'll double it. And you get to go to the Hamptons. You get to go to the Hamptons because you got to install a trading platform on like a yacht, but
Yeah.
you know, you're still going, right?
Yeah.
And these blew their minds. And so I worked for great company, amazing people. Beth Jacobson, Peter Cadell, who's their head of HR now. He did a stint at Microsoft recently and
Gotcha.
came back. Love him to death. And then, you know, if you're following the timeline here, you realize that 2008 was a pretty tough year.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, we were putting people, you know, when I was at Robert Walters, we were sending people to California to go work for Countrywide in high-level financial jobs with mortgage-backed securities.
Ooh.
We remember, I vividly remember people moving there and then it dissolving, right? And then I remember when I was with Ez in-house, we'd be putting people on interviews and they'd be like, yeah, I think I was in the right spot. Looked like they were moving. And you're like, what? And you're like, what the hell's going on? And it's 2008, right? And you're like,
And they bought 2 houses right when they moved
and they
out
bought
there.
2 houses and
no
and now,
no down
and
payment.
now have that on their resume.
Man, that's tough.
And you're like,
That's hard.
but you know, and so you know, recession, no one needed a recruiter, so I went to the West Coast and did whale watching tours, offshore
No
fishing
kidding.
trips. Yeah, so I moved to the West Coast. I had a friend that owned a fishing store out there. He wanted to bring it online. Shout out Chris Daughters. Still, we actually did the Amazon together. Not a year. It was a year ago. We did a houseboat down the Amazon. He's an amazing
That's
human.
awesome.
He's amazing.
Wow.
He is the craziest.
We're in the West Coast.
Eugene, Oregon.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm out there and we bring this website to life and we actually start selling feather hair extensions. Now let me explain this. It was a fly fishing store, and so we took his entire inventory and brought it online. And we coupled it with a blog that had, you can still see it, caddisflyshop.com, OregonFlyFishingBlog.com, still exists to this day, and you can see me, and it's crazy.
Wow.
Regardless, someone goes on American Idol and has hair extensions made of feathers, and the boom is on. And so all these fly companies run out of feathers. This is like 2009. We literally are selling wholesale, buying and selling tens of thousands of feathers a week. Chris ends up buying Cedar Lodge in New Zealand.
Those
You know
are
what I'm
meant
saying?
to be. Those are
Dude.
meant to be for fishing.
Those are my
and people
feathers.
I was going to say, was it really you who went on American Idol? Where
I
you
wish.
saw
Are you kidding me?
in advance, you're
Yeah.
like, if I go on there,
I'm gonna.
let them hear this songbird voice, but I rock these hair
Right.
extensions.
So it's-
we can
it's this-
jumpstart
we
this
could
thing.
get this
This
ripping.
new world created within that fly fishing company.
I mean, we're talking. It's like, you know, the scenes from Scarface where you're walking in the bank with the cash. Right, same thing. It's out of control. Like, you know, the
Wow.
montage with all the money counting and people are.
that's
freaking
like
out.
when Shaquille O'Neal goes to a restaurant, you know, in like sort of nowhere USA,
Yeah,
and just says like,
yeah.
"This was a great restaurant" on Twitter, and the next thing you know, the line's out the door.
lines out the door, baby. And so
wild.
you're caught up in feather money, you know, and you know, you're a damn chicken broker, and it's out of control. And I found myself, and I'm doing like whale watching trips, and
honey, we're putting in a pool. We got that feather money.
I always thought it'd be from the scales, but it's actually the feathers.
Yeah, I was single at the time. Okay, my wife and I, we had taken a break, and we were not married at the time. So, so it was a tricky time for a young Nate Stansberry. And what I found myself was like, okay, I do not want to be 30 years old. Living in Portland with a hen. I need to get back to Cleveland right now. Like, this is getting too crazy. The feather cash has gone to my head. I needed to come back. And when I came back, I was lucky enough to meet Joe Haddad, co-founder, University Tees.
Sure.
And it was... it was the day before Thanksgiving. He and I were at a crazy...
Speaking of feathers.
Yeah.
And birds.
Right.
Yeah.
My man, right? So why is the bird the logo? Why do you think? Does anybody know why bird's logo at University Tees?
I don't know. No, I never actually thought about that.
Okay, bird is the most universally recognized logo of any college, right? So it's a falcon. It's an eagle.
I gotcha.
It's the cardinal, right? Like,
yeah.
Like
the blue hens.
Blue hen. Come on.
Delaware.
Right.
What year was this that you came back to Cleveland?
09.
Okay.
Right? 09 and going into 010.
We have that in common. I was West Coast
Yeah.
for nearly a decade, and like coming back to Cleveland,
Right.
I have an appreciation for it I wouldn't have had I not left.
I understand.
I love this place.
Right.
There's also days that I wake up and I'm like, please be San Diego again.
Right.
Please. Oh, it's our lovely Cleveland.
Here we are, slush.
When it rains, Nate is like, "Oh, Oregon, this is
Oregon,
great."
yeah,
Right.
we're here.
I love it. So how did you
Another
meet
podcast,
Joe?
but-
We had a mutual friend who
Gotcha.
said we all got to go out and go get loose as a goose, and that happened. And we went out, and I was looking at different opportunities. I was doing some consulting in the HR space again, and Joe was like, "Hey, we have this position opened," and I said, "Okay." And I came in and I interviewed for it, and I said, he's like, I don't know if we have room, and I was just like, I don't care, I'll take the job. I didn't even ask what it paid; it didn't matter. And part of my job with them was to expand reach, right? And so, University Tees, basically, we have a rep program that is about 700 strong, at least it was when I left, probably about similar numbers now, on about 200 plus college campuses across the U.S., right? And so we run a sales program. I still use we, right? Because my DNA is in there, right?
No doubt.
And so when I came in, we probably had, I'm not here to blow the horn, but whatever. Like, we had probably 100 reps, and half would pick up the phone. Mm-hmm. And we built from there. And the print shop and our internal teams, we probably about a dozen employees, I'd call it. And we got it up to about 200-ish, right? And it was a great ride. And so
awesome.
You're still in the industrial space because you're screen printing, you're embroidering, and an amazing culture, amazing company. Yep. Shout out to Brett, Nick, and all the team members over there. I mean, they're great people. And that's really where we met Ron and started the journey with EOS as well.
Sure.
But you were able to really make an impact and help companies grow and expand and just kind of, understand the EOS journey. And which has brought me... I knew I was leaving University Tees. I put in a 2-year notice, right? And I really wanted to go out, and it's not that there wasn't room for me there. There certainly was. It's hardest professional decision I've ever had to make. But what I found was I was holding people back, successors to my role, that I was a drag on the P&L given the amount of lift we needed from a talent acquisition standpoint. The processes were well in place, perpetuated by people who were not me, probably administratively stronger, right? Leadership, it needs to grow, right? And so you say, oh, Nate, we always need your leadership. Well, if I'm here, that other leader can't grow into being that person. And so I told, I remember telling Joe, I said, hey, look, I'm gonna go back to agency life. Try to make an impact on smaller businesses. Try to make a difference, on businesses that we're on our journey, right? Pandemic hits and we unwind 8-9 years of work. Okay. So I say a 2-year notice because I really was going to be out within 6 months of that conversation. It ended up being 2 years because that was January of 20.
Gotcha.
I guess, what year was that? 2020?
2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we had that conversation, and I anticipated being out
later that year.
Well,
and
yeah,
then-
exactly. And we discussed what that would look like and all that. And, but then the pandemic hits, and, in a matter of 2 weeks, some of the toughest stuff I've ever had to do, and I've been a part of a lot of difficult conversations.
Let's frame this because we were going to ask it anyway. I have
Okay.
a feeling I know, you may share a little bit more where you're going with it. We talk all the time on this podcast about charging into the storm, dealing with difficult things head on.
Yeah.
When there is a seemingly more comfortable, desirable path, trusting your body and recognizing short-term pain
Yeah.
or long-lasting pain, and you kind of deal with it.
Here's my piece of advice for everybody who's going to inevitably have to deal with this stuff. Crisis management, the proverbial plane has hit the mountain. You're going to survive, God willing, as a business. There are no heroes in the leadership seat. Accept that. That doesn't mean you operate any different. You operate with compassion, clarity, path of, most information, most compassion. But you must accept, especially in the pandemic, the best this is going to be is a 6 out of 10. And the reason I give it a 6 out of 10 as the best is you're operating without all the facts. So you are asked as a leader to make decisions without any kind of idea of what this is going to look like, or you're in an unprecedented business cycle. And so if you make more right decisions than wrong, which is awesome, which is a great job, you're at a 6. No one would accept a 6 out of 10. And so you are destined to be the villain. But recognize you are the villain of circumstance. And that should not turn you into a villain. That you still must go through every interaction with compassion, with your heart full, knowing it's going to hurt, knowing you're not going to be good at this. This is one thing people say to me all the time that terrifies me. They're like, you're pretty good at this. Like anytime I have to let someone go, anytime I have to have a tough go, like, Nate, you're good at this. What they don't realize is I don't sleep the night before. I may not sleep days before. I'm sick afterward. And that's good. You should suck at this. This sucks. And so,
yeah, if you're too good, too polished, it's too easy for you.
Right.
That probably means you don't care a lot. Or
Right. Having a lot of empathy is, right, it can be to a detriment personally for a benefit of others, right? Where you do put yourself in their shoes and understand almost to a degree of like it causing you pain.
oh boy.
But still, you hit on the compassion piece. I think people often recognize that and miss out on the clarity piece, though, when that's what others really need is.
I'll give you my blueprint for letting someone go, and it's pretty short. Keep it short. Make sure we deal in absolutes. An absolute would be, after this meeting, you're terminated. That's one of the things I lead with. Hey, look, let's just take the air out of this balloon.
Yeah.
This is it. Okay?
Leave no uncertainty.
Hey, yeah. If you want to do an autopsy at some point, that's fine. Today's not that day, because you need to hear this information, and I need to help you understand exactly what's going on so that you can have a little bit of grace about this. Me too, right? You can get everything you need to be successful in your transition, which starts right now. And so we can talk about what happened, but that's not serving us. We should talk about what is happening now and what steps we need to take in order to get you out of this interaction and subsequent interactions with as intact as possible. So, knowing this, here is exactly what is going on. Here's why this is your last minute here. Here is all the paperwork you are going to need. You have my information. You have other people's information. If you do not feel comfortable coming to me, when it comes to like COBRA coverage, when it comes to continuing payment if necessary, when it comes to references, I am happy to give you an appropriate reference. And here's a picture of your desk. What off of there do I need to put in a box for you?
Leaves no room for interpretation. I understand it's probably not something that this isn't a personal attack.
Right.
All
well,
right.
Right. But I own this, right?
But you own it.
Right.
In the sense of you it's not they told me to do this or something.
Right.
In that conversation, you're the person.
The longer
and you have to live with that.
You absolutely need to get them out. You need to get them out of the building. You cannot let that information is just hit. Boom.
Yeah, you said the last minute. Like, do you actually say that? Have you said
right? For sure. I want because what's happening behind the scenes is everything's being turned off. Absolutely everything is getting scrubbed.
Right.
You know, and people look at this and they go, "Oh my gosh, that is so cold." Yeah. Yes, it is. It is because that's the job. We need to let people move on. Would you rather what? What exactly? What exactly? Remember the 6 out of 10? Because I'll tell you what the 4 looks like. The 4 is an all-out fight. The 4 is slash tires. The 4 is a Jerry Maguire moment on your floor. Which would you rather have?
Just show me the money.
A cold
moment?
6. No, like who's
Show
going with me? Like someone taking the damn fish.
Right.
By the way,
well, there's not a lot of upside.
There's no upside.
Seems like there's not a lot of upside to
Right.
dragging it out.
No,
and guessing.
Like
trying to get inside somebody's head and guessing how they're going to react and what they're going to do, because probably I would think 9 times out of 10 someone's going to be an adult about it, or they're going to go
absolutely
do the right thing. But
No
that
doubt.
1 time out of 10 that person has got an axe to grind already,
Right.
or they're
right.
like,
and if you do those things with consistency, it's not that
Bing.
listen, I'm
Yeah.
saying you're a red flag, or
I was just wronged here, so let me
Yeah.
fire off a couple emails before I'm out
Right,
the
right,
door to
right.
some customers
Right.
or some clients about what I really think about this company, blah, blah, blah.
we think about continuity as well. We think about your team that's left behind, because that's who really you've got to turn your attention to. Yes, you have this one interaction that matters a great deal, but you have an entire room full of people that you now have to explain this to, and you need to explain it well, and there can be no gray area. And so that level of coldness, that level of preparedness is to also give the situation the gravity it deserves, and to almost allow the team to mourn the loss of a team member, whether that's good or bad. And so there needs to be a degree of rigor and, almost, ritual around it. I know that's not a good word to use, but like for people to move on, they need to kind of have an idea as to what this looks like. Otherwise, I might be sitting there thinking, am I next?
Absolutely.
Right? No. Hey, here were the cuts.
Yeah.
Here's why the cuts happened. Here's what will prevent us from having future cuts. And if you get cuts, here's what to expect.
And there's all these little storms, in a sense, inside of what you just shared, because it's not only making the decision before it's made for you,
right,
by doing the uncomfortable thing, but then also addressing it head on with your team, with the others, to show that you value transparency, show that you value them, and also just having enough emotional intelligence to realize people are going to be thinking all sorts of different things if I don't give them one source of truth.
Right.
Yeah, they will fill in gaps.
Right.
If there's any gaps between truths.
Yeah.
I
try to
told
get
you
filled
after that
in
one meeting
with assumptions and anxiety and all that. So would you say that that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest storm you face in your career?
No, I mean, certainly one of the biggest, right?
Sure.
Like,
that could be positive or negative too. When
Yeah.
we talk about storms, sometimes it's a great opportunity that you charge head on into. Sometimes
I wrote an article recently, and it was in a publication like People Managing People, and it was like, how do you manage change? How do you manage internal challenges, right? And so when you think about finding the upside, as a business, when you're faced with issues like that, let's take it down a notch from a pandemic. Let's take it to we're having a season of the business where restructuring is in order. Okay, that happens. So instead of how do we position ourselves for the future, right? Like, how do we make one big change that then allows us to digest and move on? And so when I think about companies and how they tackle changes or change management, you need to cut or make adjustments to the point at which you're excited about whatever's next. Because if you're just cutting to cut costs or just cutting to kind of get out of some short-term challenges, that will come with some baggage. I would recommend anyone who's in a season of restructuring or a season of really challenging systemic changes that are needed to cut to a point where you're now excited again to go to work.
You're not fearing or just the impending doom of
what's the next cut?
Needing to cut again because you didn't go far enough.
Right.
You flirted with this uncomfortable thing and tried to minimize it, and now you get to live it all over again.
Right. And your team's living it.
Yeah.
And it'll kill you.
And realizing this is now a pattern.
Yeah.
It's going to happen again. It wasn't this cliff event or this new direction. It's just the new norm.
Well, you know how if you're in the storm too, you're not going to get through it unless you keep moving. And it feels to me like what you just said about being excited about the future might empower or give us that extra fuel to continue to move so that you do get through it instead of get caught up in it and basically end up staying underneath, those rain clouds for the long
pointing that out to others.
Well, right. And it's going to allow people to come off the bus too, who aren't excited about that shared vision, right? Like when you think about a big change and you are very intentional about what the future does look like and why you're excited, there will be a opposite excitement.
Sure. Right? So it's not enough to go out in front of your company and say, hey, we got to cut some costs.
Right.
We had to make some tough decisions because we have to cut some costs. If you don't finish that sentence with, but here's what we're cutting costs for.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's the exciting part of the future that we all are a part of. I need everybody here on board. Here's how you contribute to that. You wouldn't be in this room if you weren't part of that future vision.
Right.
Like to me, that doesn't cost anything to say, but you also have to be
ready.
thought out.
Oh.
You have to be ready.
And you're a galvanizer. We talk about, like, Kimberly introduced us to the 6 types of working genius, and that being one of these components of strong leadership, or of it's a certain strength for some people more than others, that rallying around whatever's next, because not everyone's going to be optimistic, not everyone's going to see silver lining,
and those are your next cuts.
Right.
And that no, I mean it, and that's okay.
If they don't have that willingness to see the good in things,
right?
But it still helps to, like, to your point, to share it when you are in that situation. I think by identifying it, rallying people around it, like, that's what I mean by galvanizing the team, because there's some folks that might not see it clearly in that moment, but are close enough that you can get them there, and they aren't part of the next cuts, right?
Right. Well, you're always growing as an organization, so whether you're growing together or growing apart.
Yeah.
That's it.
Good
you're
point.
Always growing. And so you think about, and I mean that like wholeheartedly, right? If you make these changes and you have a couple outliers who are like, I just don't think this is for me, that's amazing. And you give them a ton of grace and you help them find the next thing for them. Because the sign of a growing culture, right? This mosaic, I describe companies as a mosaic, right? Like, as a leader in an organization, your job is to take these irregular pieces and make something beautiful. That's it. That is your only job. And sometimes that picture gets a little foggy. Sometimes that picture is a little unclear. And so you need to adjust the pieces. And these great pieces that were a part of that former picture, well, they may not fit right. Yeah. And they're still great, and you still care for them, but it's coming at the expense of the new pieces that fit perfectly.
Healthy turnover is a real thing.
It is.
And like we believe moving on and being honorable enough to either identify it when your heart's not in it, or to ask the right questions to help uncover what that is, like that's actually an act of kindness. That's
100%.
an act of care.
Right.
And by shutting up about it and not saying a damn thing, letting it just live on, while it might feel like you're being less mean by putting this person in this situation in a sense. You didn't put them there. But
Well,
by
that's hell,
addressing
right?
that is actually selfish.
Yes.
It's not the selfless act that we tell
Correct.
ourselves it is, right?
Correct.
It's not kind.
If it's not Ron says this, he said this, he's like, look, if you're not hell yes about this company, or if you're not hell yes about this amazing opportunity, and you're also not like hell no, you're in hell.
Yeah.
You're living there. And you think to yourself, okay, and that stuck with me because I think that's where a lot of employees and team members, right, are. Like,
Difference.
maybe they're like, oof, I this is an okay job, but this isn't a terrible job.
It's just
And
enough.
this is just, and as a leader, you're sitting there and you're looking at your people, and it's the same. If you feel that way, you deserve, if you've got the ability, and not everyone, this is such a privileged comment, but screw it. Here we go. If you've got the ability to be in a hell yes scenario every single day, you owe it to yourself. It is a sin not to be. It is. And so everyone's got bills to pay. Everyone's got things that people, whatever, depend on them. I get that. It's not a reality for everyone. But if it's a reality for you, it's inexcusable.
You can put more positivity into the world, make a bigger impact on others if you're in a situation where your cup is full,
Yeah.
where you love what you're doing.
Bingo.
Right?
I think part of our message to clients too, and when we're coaching people one-on-one too, we get a lot of people that are in a difficult situation, or maybe they think they're a hell yes at the company, but their work life is completely out of whack and they don't have any time to do things outside of work. And what I try to encourage them, and what we try to coach people, that it may not be a tomorrow thing, but let's talk about a year from now.
Right.
Can we be in a hell yes full life situation
Right.
compared to where we are today, or 2 years from now? And there's some options out there, and let's do some little actions and be accountable to those day by day, week by week, month by month, and you will, you can eventually design your life in a way that is a hell yes situation. So,
No doubt.
I think there's hope for just about anybody, regardless of position that we're currently in and bills that we currently have to pay. And I think it's worth taking that action. It just requires patience and some of that long-term thinking, which is difficult, because myself included, I want that instant gratification sometimes.
Well, and things are good. You know what I mean? Like, it's scary, man. It's like okay, like, all right, I'm gonna go after this hell yeah situation. Okay, we're gonna put yourself out there a little bit. You're gonna get beat up a little bit.
True.
Like, these things happen.
You'll
right?
get
How many
humbled.
times have
Yeah.
you heard the grass isn't always
No,
greener?
I
And
know.
Or you got to go backwards and pay for a little
Sure
bit,
you do.
or
You
Trust.
do.
You gotta
Absolutely.
trust your instincts, trust your body. If you're honest with yourself.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Even if you've not yet experienced it. Unfortunately, I've talked to a lot of people too where they don't see that hell yes as even a possibility because of how experiences have shaped their beliefs, and the experiences they've had have been with nothing but either a poor culture or a horrible leader, or just work that didn't align with their instinctive strengths and their like unique ability.
Right.
On the flip side of that, peak leadership, the people who have lifted you up or given you, influenced you in some formative way, given you belief. You've mentioned quite a few people. It sounds like you've been fortunate enough, like Pete and I, to have been exposed to some people that you hold in the highest regard.
I do.
Where they said, or more importantly, did something that stuck with you and became a part of you. What do you think of when if I say the phrase, who is your peak leader? And what are more importantly, I feel like you will probably say their name, but what are the characteristics of them that stood out most and that you've strived to emulate?
So first off, for me, it's my parents, and that's kind of a cop-out, but we start there, right? Like, my parents gave me a great foundation and are the cornerstone for how I raise my kids and how I conduct myself. If we're talking in professional settings,
well, what is it about your parents, real quick, just in terms of that you've tried to employ in your own parenting skills?
My mom didn't take any crap for the most part, right? Like, just all the love in the world, but, she's not the type not to say something, right? Like, which I think is problematic for some people, not for me. I'd rather know where we stand. I'd rather have the fight, and I give my mom a lot of credit for that because saying everything's fine or accepting things and yet they aren't is toxic.
Yeah.
And then my dad was really clear with what the expectations were. He also let me run, right? He also let me kind of do my thing and was hands off in that regard. But I know where he stands. He also held himself to a higher standard, and both my parents worked. They were first generation college graduates, lived in less than ideal circumstances. I mean, they did not grow up, they grew up poor, straight up, put themselves through school. And, we went for nothing. My brother and I had an amazing childhood and had a great education and great role models. And that's not the case for everybody. And to this day, they're happily married, very much a part of our life and continue to be a model for, grandparents, spouses. My dad will sit on the occasional board meeting, which is funny.
Sure.
But, you think about like that. So that comes first. And then when we think about leadership, I got my first opportunity. I was in the back of a semi-truck loading it at night for a FedEx. And I was thinking I was going to go into the military, right? And I'd taken my physical, I'd taken my MEPS, I'd scored and gotten into the programs I wanted to.
No kidding. Which branch?
I didn't care.
Oh, okay.
Right? I was going to Kent State and I was doing fine. But, I grew up in, semi-suburban, mostly rural Ohio. It was like, no offense, but which enterprise am I going to work at? Like, give me a break. Like, what about that is inspiring, right?
They give you the tools to be your own boss.
Give me a break.
They'll
I'm
pick
out.
you up.
Like, right. Like, you're talking to the dude that went to work for the fish company.
I'm a Business Plus member, by the way, from Enterprise, so I do like Enterprise.
Hey,
I
this
can't help
segment.
but use that quote either. They give you the tools to be your own boss. I have a friend who has worked with Enterprise a long time, and it's like, great corporate structure, and they've given me the tools, Joe. I'm like, I bet they have.
I would chain smoke every day while washing them cars, man. It would be a problem. It would be such a problem. There would be issues. You would see me. It would be terrifying. So I'm like, military. Here we go. I like a short haircut. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was a good athlete.
I can run.
Yeah, I can run. Anyway, so I start. I quit my job at Dick's, get my life together, and I start loading semi-trucks at night because that sounded terrible, frankly. So 5 days a week, I'm stacking semis with boxes mostly from medical suppliers. So it was like wheelchairs and stuff. It was heavy crap.
Interesting.
Yeah, right? Invacare, a few other places. They would just be like whole, and after a couple months, they're like, holy crap, you're still here and you've trained everybody. I'm like, yeah. And then they would come to my campus and I knew everybody and I would help them recruit. And Kiara Bunch took a chance on me and she's like, hey, why don't you come in, do some campus recruiting, do some HR stuff. I'll show you the ropes. And she stuck with me, literally plucking me out of the back of a semi-truck. And she stuck with me for years and years. And dealt with my deficiencies as a professional and corrected me when I needed correcting, let me run when I needed to run, and moreover gave me the opportunity to expand who I was as a person and a professional because she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And it was my ability to influence others, my ability to get the job done, have fun in any kind of difficult environment. And to this day, all credit for any kind of professional stuff has to start and end with her. As a result, I was able to kind of get a clarity on where I wanted to be. And, she's a special human, very understanding, clearly.
Definitely.
But and then along the way, you've got Kurt Krager, Robert Walters, Beth Jacobson, as Castle Integration, she taught me a lot about like what she would not tolerate from a resume, right? Peter Cadell is always my shoulder cry on. He like is now HR manager at Ez, but was like a heavy hitter at Microsoft for a while. You've got Chris Daughters, Caddis Fly Shop, amazing human, just an absolute monster in the industry, and really showed me the entrepreneurial side, what it would take if you wanted to chase a passion. And the answer is, if you do have a passion that you think you want to turn into a career, let me tell you something. You gotta have like 5 revenue streams within that passion. You absolutely must be a hustler. It cannot be linear. It can't be, I want to do X and I'm going to be a rock climber all day. No, dude, no. It needs to be, I'm going to sell the shoes for rock climbing. I'm going to host the trips for rock climbing. You absolutely have to find all the ways you can make money off this and live it. And that's the only way it works. And that's what Chris gave me. And he's living it, and he's great. And he's a great human. He's a hyper entrepreneurial dude.
Cool. He's the Feather King?
He's the Feather King, baby.
States?
He was. Some close friends of mine. I mean, you've got, Nick Simmons, who's 2-time Olympic athlete, was my roommate out in Oregon. I didn't have any friends out there. And basically I met the guy that had the key to the city. Okay. For real. Under his bed. Okay.
What?
Yeah.
It was a physical key.
He has the actual
He's
plaque.
like a modern day Steve Prefontaine.
We would run the Prefontaine Trail
No way,
together.
really?
Look him up. And he and I were good fishing buddies. He's from Boise, Idaho. Came to the shop. I took him and his dad fishing, right? And I'm like, so what's your deal? I'm like, I just moved here from New York. He's like, cool, yeah. I'm here training with the Nike team. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? He's like,
That's
I just got here from Beijing. I'm like, okay.
They're like, I ran cross country in high school.
Dude, don't even go there. and like literally we go partying like 2 months, not even later. And then we're living together for years. And so, and he and I are still super tight, like
That's awesome.
super tight.
Yeah.
But like Nick, gave me a lot of, it was a lonely time out there, dude. Like,
By the way, I mentioned Prefontaine. I didn't know much about him until I read the book Shoe Dog. So if you've not read that book, it's the history of Nike and how the company started and how Phil Knight started and it was just a running shoe company, which I didn't even know. It was called Blue Ribbon Sports when it first started, and Prefontaine was the first athlete who was basically signed to Nike, and he was like a legend.
He's a legend.
I didn't realize that.
He's still
and
a legend.
Unfortunately, passed away in a car accident when he was really young. But was like a celebrity runner, which I didn't even know. And he was up in the Eugene area, I believe.
No, it's still a thing, man.
Yeah.
And Prefontaine is still alive and well. And then the list goes on. You got Nick and Joe at University Tees, and you got my brother who's been a big influence in my life. He's professionally works in the technology sector, and all these people, right? Like you kind of look through, and the list could go on and on. But this is the reason why I'm here today.
I think you used the word amalgamation earlier. I was going to say, all right, 2 points if you can spell. Word. The next one's wrong. Amalgamation, zeitgeist. I was going to throw one more in there. I'm sure you'd spell it right. Yeah. But no, I think we are an amalgamation of all of the leaders we've been fortunate enough to be exposed to. And if we can pick one or two of the characteristics that meant most to us, that were most persistently demonstrated by that person, we kind of put them all together and are a product of that network, right? And of that influence.
Let me piggyback on this thought. Yeah. For any leader out there, the best thing about my job, and so right now, I'm managing director for an agency that serves the industrial sector, right? Like, so I did end up leaving University Tees and joining Rust Belt Recruiting and Taylor Evans because I thought we could get there faster together. And he had a great brand. He's been, around for 5 years, and I've been there for 2.
Perfect segue, by the way. I wanted to get
but here's my thing. If you're a leader right now, the best thing I can do is help other people become their best selves. Like that's what like gets it really going for me. It's like, how can we help each other? How can we pluck that person out of the back of the truck? How can we give them that opportunity? Because that's what it takes.
Yeah.
That's all it is. You just got to give someone a shot.
The first example you shared, like that resonated in such a big way because somebody seeing something in you that you don't yet recognize in yourself, that I believe in you and I'm going to help you realize it. Right. Making space for you to learn, like that autonomy and empowerment. Right. So often, instead of just telling people the way or, giving them the ABC of how to get there. You give them some broad brush,
Right.
direction, ask them a couple questions, let them learn. They'll rise to the occasion.
Sure.
Right. And that's when you find those that you continue to invest in.
Right.
And the other thing that you said was about, well, hell, I lost my train of thought,
That's all
but I
right.
think it was around making
same.
space, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that hit home in such a way because I had a very similar,
Sure.
in my formative years, somebody who's like, hey, kid, you got something going.
Right.
You're in kind of a shit situation
Sure.
now. What I can tell you is if you make this move, it's not, I can't give you a better title, can't give you more pay, anything
Right.
like that. You're going to have to take a little bit of a risk,
Right.
but I promise you, if you do the things I feel like you're capable of doing,
You're
I'll
gonna
get
be
you
just
there.
fine. Yeah.
And like so much learning and respect. And I'll talk more about it on another one, but John Henderson from
Yeah.
Sony Electronics, that was the one who first believed in me in that way. And, to your point, if we can help other people get better,
You have to.
hopefully we'll get better
Yeah.
in turn, right? Because we realize we can learn from everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter growth stage, career stage, or any of that sort of stuff, right?
The best thing professionally in my career has been helping people find their way. Joe Musgrave is a prime example.
Yeah, I remember Joe.
Yeah, I miss working with him every day. And my team right now has been with me for a few years, and I care deeply about them. And I get called woke all the time. And then I say, no. You're confusing. You got it almost there. I said, I'm wolf. Because I'm the wolf at the door telling you how to keep me away. Because I'm coming for your people. I promise. Call me woke again. I'll have them all.
Call me woke one more time.
Call me woke one more time. I will take every person from here.
Put them in a better situation for themselves.
We place a few hundred a year. We're not messing around.
messing
And you're
around.
still intimately involved. I was
Hell
asking
yeah,
you before.
I'm running the
'cause
search right now.
And I have respect for that. I have appreciation as well to stay in touch with. Like,
Oh,
keep
yeah.
pulse of what's happening, stay involved when it's
The team
things of
hates
high
it.
priority.
The
I'm
team
sure.
absolutely hates it because I'm like walking around like Michael Jordan. They're like, yeah, but right. You get like one search, and this dude,
You can take it too far too if you get to
It's
that
amazing.
micromanagement level instead of empowering. I got a feeling that's not the case.
God, no.
But it's just that blend between working in the business
Mm-hmm.
and still stepping back and working on the business the way that I've interacted with you and
Right.
seen you.
I love recruiting. It comes natural. I can't help it. It's the best thing you can do professionally. It's so much fun. I know people hate it, but like whatever. When done properly, there is no other job where you can go from absolute zero to hero so fast.
When you can connect to things that
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
benefit each other
Mm-hmm.
so perfectly.
Change a life, you know?
Every day.
It's a high
Every
from
day.
it, right?
It's
Whether
crazy.
it's on your own team
Right.
or
Yeah.
somewhere like
Yeah.
you're invested in the success of that
Right.
human and the other humans at that company,
Yep.
and to marry the two, hell yeah.
Well, we
That's-
feel similar when we can connect two clients together.
Sure.
We'll say, hey,
100%.
you're telling me that you might need this. I have a client that actually does that also.
That's your professional baby.
It's exciting,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Because you're adding value or being helpful and
Right. Or more of a marriage.
Just want to
You know?
connect. Just want to connect people,
Right.
right? I also, you hit on something, and I feel like it's a parallel between how we do business, how you do business, and something that many have been burned by some sort of a agency firm consultant relationship, or for whatever reason, whether it was more their fault or that of the service provider, whatever.
Yeah.
So, a recurring theme between the ones that I've had the best success with, and something we strive to be, something I heard the sentiment expressed there. If it is openly acknowledged and agreed upon, we are meant to serve you,
Yeah.
not to please you.
That's correct.
So with that, there's going to be some things that we say, slow down.
Right.
I know you're saying you want ABC, you want these 10 things, but if we rush towards that too quickly, it is going to take longer.
Yeah.
You're not going to get as good of a result.
Right.
So this step that seems like it's arduous or
Yeah.
slowing us down it exists for a reason. We need to understand you, and that will give us more speed, more effectiveness as we go.
Exactly.
Right?
And something I tell a lot of people is like, I can't change your perception of this. I can't change your experience. I think of it like this. Would you, if budget wasn't a thing, okay, and you thought, hey, I need to add a recruiter to this team on contingency, would you hire us? And I would say that we'd stack up against any recruiters anywhere. And that's the beauty in our team. I think people would love to have us. And so we run on retained, some contingent, it all kind of depends. But that puts us at a disadvantage because if you don't run it our way, well, we don't get paid, right? Like if the outcome isn't what we need, so like for us, we absolutely have to run it our way or unfortunately we can't work together until you're ready.
Yeah. That's responsible. That's how you stay healthy as a business, and by being clear about that.
Yeah. Avoid getting taken advantage of and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Or like distorting the
Sure.
It's like the, what do they say? It's like manifesting the terrible experience,
Right.
It's like, I had this terrible experience, but I won't work with you this different way. It's like, well, what the hell? Like, you should only expect a terrible experience.
Well, it's to their detriment too. And,
right.
It can unfairly put a bad name on the industry as well.
Oh, sure.
If
the industry's tough.
expectations are not lined up.
That's not one that comes without learning through the pain of when somebody's not a fit. Right. We've talked about this on a couple episodes so far, whether it be firing a client, whether it be never taking them on, whether it be saying, I'm not the best fit and want to introduce you to somebody or recommend you do this internally.
Sure.
Why do you want me? To be very clear about that, who you work with, right?
On our sales calls, it's mostly that. It's mostly like, well, what are you doing internally and why do you think you have this challenge and how is this that or that? What's going on? Because plenty of times we'll be like, well, yeah, we can't solve that. This is the pay is off, the job is off, the scope is something. Like if you want to work with us, we're not miracle workers. There's not like a secret candidate pool that we're going to pull from. The one thing we can solve is more that project management and intentionality. And yes, we have the tools and yes, we have the know-how. But all that in the world isn't going to change what you are and what you're offering as an employer.
They have to start there.
These are the Glengarry candidates.
Yeah.
You don't get these.
You don't get those.
Unless you're a closer.
Right.
Focus on culture.
Yep.
Right? Because from that comes better retention, better attraction,
your people.
better results.
Right.
It's what your people deserve. Leaders are at the center of it. Right? That's why we do this. That's why we do all that we do.
Right.
Is if we can arm people through better awareness, better tools, a kick in the ass.
Oh, sure.
And some accountability sometime to shift perspective and help them realize the unintended consequences of what they do. It's going to lead to less shitty leaders, better workplace cultures in a lot of places. You have an active hand in that as well. Thank you for the work that you do. What else can you tell listeners about getting in touch with you?
Sure.
Is there anything from Rust Belt Recruiting in terms of resources?
Yeah.
Or I'd seen a
playbook. We just put a
like,
playbook out or a white paper out that kind of illustrates our process in detail. It's on LinkedIn. I think that's a great place to connect with us. Rust Belt Recruiting, Taylor Evans or Nate Stansberry. That's me, obviously. But this playbook is free, available. Just kind of gives our philosophical view on how we would approach, I guess, industry agnostic, but yes, centered towards the industrial sector, how we approach talent acquisition. And I think that for an internal team member, two things. One, you could run with the playbook, okay? Nothing in there is proprietary. Go for it. Have at it. Or if you think that this is an approach that your company would embrace or would like to explore further, you can reach out to me or Taylor, and we'd be happy to fill in the blanks because there's a lot, right? Like we painted the playbook with broad strokes, right? So that people could take it and make it their own.
Yeah.
And also so that we can speak to it, right? But it's the same playbook we're going to run for you and what we see working.
Love it.
Great stuff, man.
What's your email address?
It's Nate S, right? So they're, NATES at rustbeltrecruiting.com.
Perfect. I'll add a link to the playbook in the description too, so viewers can find it or listeners can find it.
Right.
I'd love to sit down with you again on your charter boat sometime.
I think that's in order.
Oh yeah.
Woke Nate's.
Don't. Woke Nate's fishing
Woke
tours.
Nate has the fishing department expert award of 2004 at the Dick's Sporting Goods.
Don't do that to
Right.
me, Joe. I mean, I still.
Nate, you're so many things.
Let's get out on the
This
lake.
is the one thing I'm going to get hung
Let's
up
get
on.
some sporting
This is the
goods.
one
Let's get
thing.
some. Let's get some feathers.
And
let's
that's
get
my
some
MO.
walleye.
Sorry, like while I'm self-deprecating as all get out, if I see one thing I can kind of glean onto or grab onto, I just won't let it go. So sorry, I can't shake it either. But you said wolf instead of woke because you're coming for their people if they don't treat them right.
If they don't treat them right.
Yep.
Right. Do the right thing.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Nate.
Yeah,
it's been a
you.
blast.
Immensely.
Man. That was a quick 2 hours, I will say.
It went a little bit, but I think it was good. Hopefully, people find some real value from this and get in touch with you.
I appreciate it.
We'll continue to, kind of share the good word of what you guys are doing over there. I'm glad to have gotten to see some of it myself. Pete, any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to hit on?
No, I just appreciate it, man. I appreciate the approach that you take and the partnership approach and also the timeline that you give because that's something that always bothers me about anyone in the service business and our own selves included is, if anyone's promising results, but they don't give any sort of timeline, as a consumer, I'll be thinking, well, how long is this going to take? You know, and as a person that, has a short attention span from time to time, we want results, and entrepreneurial companies, especially small businesses, need results quickly because a lot of times they can't afford to wait 6 months or so to fill the type of position they need. So I appreciate both of those things. The partnership, ensuring people do the hard work because a lot of us need the accountability to do the hard work sometimes and to really take a look inward, but also giving that suggested or promised timeline that this isn't going to be something that's drawn out forever and you could just expect to keep us on retainer for the better part of a decade, without seeing necessarily a result. So the lack of kicking the can down the road to me is a very Buffalo-esque charging into the storm part of things, and I just appreciate the authenticity and the willingness to go into the background and give us some of the the good, the bad, and the ugly.
This is fun.
Well, I
hope you
appreciate
had a good time with it.
Joe, Pete, I've been an EOS fan for a long time, fan of you both. And actually, I was excited. Joe, when you were like, hey, we should do it, I was like, I'm already doing the podcast, man. Like, I'm following it. I'm seeing it out there.
Nice.
But no, I appreciate the opportunity. This stuff means a lot to me, and I'm just extremely blessed to be able to come in here and share it with anyone out there listening.
Love it.
Awesome.
Thanks again, folks. One last thing I'll leave you with. If you are at a place that you acknowledge you can't do everything on your own and you realize there are some gaps or things you could probably be doing better in terms of attracting and retaining talent for your business, or you have critical roles that you need to hire for, you don't have the capacity to move with speed the way that your competitors are, call Nate. He'll at very least point you in the direction.
That's right.
But I feel like he'll probably have some solutions he can offer you, especially if you're in industrial
Yeah.
and within 150 miles of Cleveland.
That's correct.
All right. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.